Well, good evening, this is Houndog Steve wishing you a very pleasant evening, and this evening I'm bringing you a very, very strange story. This was put out by the Ottawa Citizen, a Canadian publication, and it is about the armed forces using a propaganda campaign against Canadians. And this is very, very disturbing because it means basically that the Canadian forces have waged war now against the Canadian public. Forged letter warning about wolves on the loose, part of Canadian forces propaganda campaign that went awry. And this here is a screenshot of a letter from the Nova Scotia government which was sent out to residents to warn about a pack of wolves on the loose in the province. The letter was actually a forgery by the Canadian military personnel as part of a propaganda training mission. And it's so amazing that the government would openly, in your face, admit propaganda. And they're putting out propaganda to the Canadian public. And this is going to go online. I've got a second article. It's going to be too long for one video, but I'm going to follow up with a second video. And that's exactly what's happened. You'll be stunned by this, my Canadian friends. The letter told residents to be wary of wolves that had been reintroduced into the area by the provincial and federal governments, and warned the animals were now roaming the Annapolis Valley. The letter, which later became public, sparked concern and questions among residents, but was later branded as fake by the Nova Scotia government, which didn't know the military was behind the deception. The training also involved using a loudspeaker to generate wolf sounds. The Canadian forces confirmed to this newspaper. The fake letter was part of new skills being tested by the military as it hones its expertise for launching propaganda missions at home and abroad. The letter was developed by information warfare specialists with the Halifax Rifles, a reserve unit. They not only forged the logo of the Wildlife Division of Nova Scotia's Department of Lands and Forestry, but they also attributed the letter to a real Nova Scotia government employee, even though they didn't have permission to do so. A phone number on the letter, which residents were to call if they had concerns about the wolves, was traced by this newspaper to the work number of an Environment Canada employee who also appears to be a Canadian Forces reservist. The Canadian Forces revealed its role behind the fake letter last week to the Nova Scotia government, and then on the weekend to local news media. Media outlets reported military staff had written the letter but didn't know why. Emma Bryant, a professor at Bard College in the US who specializes in researching military propaganda, said what the Canadian Forces did was a major violation of ethics. This is way over the top, Bryant said. It is a very dangerous path when you start targeting your own public with false information and trying to manipulate them. Bryant said the deception has nothing to do with wolves. It was likely an exercise in the testing the military skills in trying to manipulate the population with false information. You start a rumour about wolves on the loose, and then you see how the public reacts, she added. Similar deception operations were tried by contractors of SCL, a propaganda company which had worked for the US and British militaries in Afghanistan and other locations in Asia. In those cases, false information was transmitted to villagers to convince them not to send their children to religious schools where they might be radicalized. But instead of being truthful, the contractors concocted an information campaign claiming pedophiles were operating in religious schools and parents shouldn't send them there because their children would be in danger of being molested. Department of National Defence spokesman Dan Leboutillier said the fake letter wasn't meant to be released to the public, and an investigation is underway to determine how that happened. The letter was an aid for the propaganda training. Leboutillier said he didn't know why the loudspeaker was set up to transmit wolf sounds, and that will be investigated as well. Are you kidding me? Are you absolutely kidding me? You didn't know why the wolf sounds were set up, the loudspeakers were set up? Oh yeah, I'm sure a thorough investigation will take place. The training initiative did not follow the established approval process and was not okayed by senior leaders, he added. Oh, no surprises there. The Nova Scotia propaganda training comes as the Canadian Forces spools up its capabilities to conduct information warfare, influence operations and other deception missions aimed at populations overseas and, if necessary, the Canadian public. What? and other deception missions aimed at populations including the Canadian public? Bryant revealed on Monday the Canadian Forces spent more than $1 million in training its public affairs officers in skills to influence targeted populations. In July, this newspaper reported a team assigned to a Canadian military intelligence unit monitored and collected information from people's social media accounts in Ontario, claiming such data mining was needed to help troops working in long-term care homes during the CV outbreak. The collection involved comments made by the public about the provincial government's failure in taking care of the elderly in the province. That data was turned over to the Ontario government with a warning from the team it represented a negative reaction from the public. The newspaper reported at the same time that the Canadian Forces planned a propaganda campaign aimed at heading off civil disobedience by Canadians during the CV outbreak. Well, fancy that. Why would there possibly be civil disobedience when people are locked down and stopped from working? The plan used similar propaganda tactics to those employed against the Afghan population during the war in Afghanistan, including loudspeaker trucks to transmit government messages. The propaganda operation was never put into action. In addition, some Canadian military officers have suggested creating fake Facebook and other social media accounts for carrying out deception operations, as well as harnessing social media accounts of Canadian Forces members, military-friendly academics, and retired senior military staff to challenge opposition politicians and journalists who raise controversial issues regarding Canadian Forces. So not only are they going to use propaganda to fool you about all kinds of things, but they're going to use the propaganda to fool you about what is actually truly going on within the Canadian Armed Forces. The Canadian Forces stresses that it follows ethical guidelines in its propaganda operations. Oh, well, you're kidding me. Come on. Follows ethical, well, it's not ethical to begin with. So how can it even have ethical guidelines? Jesus. But others inside the military say that it isn't the case, pointing to the Nova Scotia operation as a prime example, as it violated Canadian privacy law and the criminal code when soldiers forged documents. The fake wolf letter was dated September the 19th, 2 days after Chief of Defence Staff General John Vance met with senior military leaders to explain the value of ethical decision-making and the importance of maintaining the credibility of the CAF by being honest and transparent in everything we do. Oh my God, hubris goeth before a fall. And if you've enjoyed this article, please like, comment and subscribe below. And in the meantime, this is Houndog Steve signing off, wishing you a very pleasant evening, and we'll talk very, very shortly.